The Celestial Empire, or Points and Pickings of Information About China and the Chinese, by George Mogridge. Chapter 4. The People of China. As I shall offer you points and pickings of most things connected with the Chinese, so it may be as well to say something here in a few words about the people, that you may not be altogether ignorant of their appearance and character. That was an odd thought which I met with the other day. The Chinese nation is so ancient that I cannot bring myself to think there are any young people in it. The very children appear to me as though they only pretended to be young. And yet, odd as the thought is, something very like it has often occurred to my own mind. The Chinese are, perhaps, in size equal to Europeans, with their knees a little more apart than is consistent with graceful motion. I question whether many Chinese porters would not match in muscular strength any that could be brought to compare with them. The hair of the Celestials is black and coarse, and their heads are broader behind and narrower before than ours. Some persons reason from this that their intellect can never, under the most favorable circumstances, equal that of Europeans. All I shall say on this point is that if we have advantages over the African, the Indian, and the Chinese, we are bound to surpass them in wisdom, benevolence, and virtue. The foreheads of the Chinese are narrow, their faces somewhat broad, and their eyes and other features small, so that they have a vacant, unintellectual expression, which their high cheekbones, their shaven heads, and their plaited tails by no means relieve. I never look on the unenlightened face of a fat Chinese without thinking of a large house with little windows. The higher classes have very long nails, especially on the left hand. The Chinese women, as they value a white skin, make use of paint, which rather increases than lessens the want of intelligence in their faces, except when their countenances are lighted up with a smile. They have delicate hands, gracefully arched eyebrows, and regular and oval features, but their eyes seem oddly set, their noses are somewhat flat, and their faces sadly lack power of expression. Many ladies remove their eyebrows and substitute a delicately curved pencil line. The practice of killing the foot, or of firmly compressing it in childhood, is a sad one. Hardly, however, is it likely to be abandoned. At the tender age of 5 years, the foot of the child is forced into a line with the leg and bound in that position with 2 of the toes bent under the sole. A foot 2 inches in length is the idol of a Chinaman. I fancy that I see you holding up your hands. The Queen of England has the credit of having the prettiest little foot in the world and of being an admirable dancer. I should much like to see one of the club-footed ladies of Pekin standing up in the ballroom beside her. It would make me prouder of my country, my countrymen, and my countrywomen than ever. The small feet of the ladies in China are called kumlin, or golden water lilies, their slender shapes willow waists, and their eyes silver seas. The blue outer garment of Chinese ladies, with their black and white or white flounced with gold edges, are very elegant, and not less so the plaited and embroidered skirts beneath them. Chinese beauties often turn up their hair on the back of the head in bunches, fastened with bodkins and adorned with wreaths of flowers. They play the guitar and smoke, and are seldom without their fiancé. Every nation has its peculiarities, if not its extravagances in dress, and even the disfigurement of the bandaged foot of the Chinese lady is surpassed in danger, if not in absurdity, by the tight lacing of the British fair. When a Chinese lady, tottering on her little feet, affects to fall, and when an English lady screams for assistance at sight of a spider, both are influenced by the same feeling. They excite an interest by their apparent helplessness. The dress of the Chinaman is suited to the climate of the East, and it is regulated by usage, so that a man cannot wear just what clothes he pleases. A long robe with ample sleeves, white in summer and blue in winter, is the prevailing garment of the better classes, while at festivals, embroidered robes blazoned with a stork, a tiger, or a dragon, as the case may be, are worn. An embroidered knee pad is quite common, that their penitential kneelings may be less painful. These pads are sometimes very elegant, and thus, though worn as symbols of humility, they become sources of pride. The light, broad-brimmed hat of the Chinese is very characteristic. A mandarin, splendidly attired in his robes, stiff with embroidery and gold, and wearing his feather with 3 eyes, should, to come up to the lordly estimation in which he is characterized by the Chinese, walk like a dragon and pace like a tiger. But you shall have an excellent sketch of a dandy mandarin drawn by Captain Bingham. It is as follows. This mandarin was of the finest specimens of a man I had till then seen in China. He stood about 6 feet 2 or 3 inches and was apparently stout in proportion. He wore the winter cap, the crown of which was a puce-colored satin, shaped too, and fitting close to the head, with a brim of black velvet turned sharply up all round the front, and hind parts rising rather higher than the sides. In fact, in shape much resembling the paper boats we make for children. On the domestic-shaped top of this he wore a white crystal sexangular button in a handsome setting. Beneath this was a one-eyed peacock's feather falling down between his shoulders. This feather was set in green jadestone about 2 inches long, beyond which about 10 inches of the feather projected, and, though apparently but one, is in fact formed of several most beautifully united. His mauqua, or riding coat, was of fine blue camlet, the large sleeves of which extended about half down the forearm, and the skirts nearly to the hip. Under this he wore a richly figured blue silk jacket, the sleeves equally large, but reaching nearly to the wrist, and the skirt sufficiently long to display the full beauty of it below the mauqua. These loose dresses always fold over the right breast and are fastened from top to bottom with loops and buttons. His unwhisperables were of a light blue figured Nankin crepe, cut much in the modern Greek style, being immediately below the knee, tucked into the black satin mandarin boots, that in shape much resemble the old Hessian, once so common in this country, with soles some 2 inches thick, the sides of which were kept nicely white. Warren's jet, not yet having been introduced. The figure was completed by his apparently warlike but really peaceable implements, which no respectable Chinaman would be seen without. Via the fan with its highly worked sheath, the purse or tobacco pouch, in the exquisite embroidery of which great ingenuity is displayed, the variety of silver tooth and ear picks, with a pocket for his watch, the belt to which these are attached, having a small leather case fixed to it, to contain his flint and steel. I had nearly forgotten his tail, his beautiful tail, the pride of every Chinaman's heart. And in this case, if all his own, he might well be proud of it. I'm afraid to say how thick it was, but it reached halfway down his leg, and I would defy Roland's Macassar to give a finer gloss. In short, he was the very epitome of a dandified Chinese cavalry officer. While this Mandarin was mounting the ship's side, his fan had been allowed to rest in its case. But he was no sooner firmly on the deck than out flew this everlasting companion of a Chinaman. Nor do I think he could have accomplished his salute without it. If you are given to be dainty in your appetite, if you cannot eat dogs and cats, slugs, worms and snails, and if a stew of snakes and a mess of grasshoppers would have no attractions in your eyes, you had better not sit down to a Chinese dinner table. Not only are these animals, reptiles and insects eaten by the Chinese, but almost all other kinds that are found in the empire. Should you ever visit among the people, the first time you receive an invitation crimson card and are met on leaving your sedan chair by your courteous host, assuring you that he has long respected your odoriferous reputation, the first time you sit down to take up your ivory chopsticks tipped with silver to banquet on salted earthworms, figured pigeons' eggs cooked in gravy, smoked fish in porcelain saucers, bird's nest soup, shark's fins, crabs, pounded shrimps, and monster grubs, you will heartily wish the worms once more in the earth, the pigeons in the air, and the shark's fins at the bottom of the sea. The bird's nest soup will not be so very bad, but those abominable monster grubs hardly will you bear. You will be ready to start up on your feet and to sing aloud, "Oh, the roast beef of old England, and oh, the old English roast beef." In England, the staff of life is wheaten bread, but in China it is rice. This is boiled and usually swept into the mouth out of a basin. Had the Chinese our broad acres of pasture land, no doubt they would live much on beef or mutton. But this not being the case, they consume fish, pork and fowl on a large scale, to which must be added the flesh of wild horses, dogs, cats, rats, mice, grubs, sharks' fins, birds' nests of a particular kind, sea slugs, and other things. With the pea say, the sweet potato, the root of the arrowroot, the water lily, the water chestnut, bindweed, and other roots for vegetables. If they did not kill many sharks, they would never have the abundance of fish they now possess. They drink tea, liqueurs distilled from rice, and of course water, but they are not overfond of the latter. The residencies of the Chinese are odd places, very neat and very elegant, but there appears in them no unity. They are scattered groups of summer houses and low cottages, with a portico in front, but I may say a little more on this subject in another place. The Chinese, I speak not of their rulers, appear to be among themselves a mild, reasonable, and friendly people. Far from being self-willed and boisterous, they seem to give way with a good grace to what appears to be just and right, unwilling to be obstinate in points where reason is against them. Age is reverenced by them, their parents are honored, and their poor relations acknowledged and assisted. They are both docile and industrious, but this is the bright side of their character. I must now rub a burnt cork over their faces. I cannot help it. Justice is justice all the world over. There is a great deal of outside in the character of the Chinese. Under a specious appearance, they have much insincerity, and often, where etiquette and seeming kindness abound, the heart is hollow as a drum. The law of the land has more influence than conscience over their actions. They are distrustful, jealous, and envious, selfish, cold-blooded, and barbarously cruel. Nor is this to be wondered at. We ought not to expect grapes from thorns, nor figs from thistles. Let us look for a moment at the Chinese nation steadily, for we have, without the sanctities of a Sabbath day, a false religion, full of darkness, confusion, and absurdity, inundating the land from one end to the other with idols. Next, we have a tyrannous and grinding government, the head of which, the emperor, has absolute power over the liberty and lives of more than 300 million human beings. Then come the courts of law, wherein abound deception, frauds, lying, bribery, and injustice, add to which debased morals and depraved practices everywhere prevail. Among the mass of the people, poverty renders them reckless. Familiarity with cruelty makes them hard-hearted. The female sex is held in low estimation and degraded, and infanticide or exposure of infants, though not so common as it has been represented to be, is practiced among them. The Chinese, as I said, have no Sabbath. When such a state of things shall bring forth a virtuous race of beings, we may reasonably expect the Ethiop to change his skin and the leopard his spots. Who that is born in Britain can look at this picture without fondly turning to his native land and exclaiming, "England, with all thy faults, I love thee still." For myself, with thankful heart, I could cry out over and over again, "Old England forever!" Having said so much that is unfavorable to the Chinese character, let me relate an anecdote of a Chinese merchant which is highly creditable to him. Were such instances of gratitude and generosity more common than they are in every country of the world, they would redound to the honor of mankind. An English merchant of the name of C resided many years at Canton and Macau, where a sudden reverse of fortune reduced him from a state of affluence to the greatest necessity. A Chinese merchant, named Qingqua, to whom he had formerly rendered service, gratefully offered him an immediate loan of $10,000, which the gentleman accepted and gave his bond for the amount. This the Chinese immediately threw into the fire, saying, "When you, my friend, first came to China, I was a poor man. You took me by the hand and assisted my honest endeavors, made me rich. Our destiny is now reversed. I see you poor, while I am blessed with affluence." The bystanders had snatched the bond from the flames. The gentleman, sensibly affected by such generosity, pressed his Chinese friend to take the security, which he did, and then effectually destroyed it. The disciple of Confucius, beholding the increased distress it occasioned, said he would accept of his watch, or any little valuable, as a memorial of their friendship. The gentleman immediately presented his watch, and Qingqua, in return, gave him an old iron seal, saying, "Take this seal. It is one I have long used and possesses no intrinsic value. But as you are going to India to look after your outstanding concerns, should fortune further persecute you, draw upon me for any further sum of money you may stand in need of. Sign it with your own hand and seal it with this signet, and I will pay the money." Grateful and generous heathen, a Christian offers thee the homage of the heart, and while he contemplates his own pure faith and thine exalted deeds, blushes to think that Christian lands should furnish so few instances of thy superior virtue. It may be that thou art above the stars, but if still an inhabitant of the earth, pilgrim on land or roamer of the sea, angels of mercy guide and comfort thee.